So let's welcome Rhonda for the diversity team BoF.
Welcome everybody. Actually, someone from Grupo Dignidade is meant to join me. She's unfortunately a bit late, so I'm sort of starting out with what is the diversity team, how did it get created, and we'll see how the timing information for that works. I was approached 2016 in Cape Town if we wouldn't want to have someone came up to me and told me, yeah, we have the Debian Women project, but what about, don't we want to create a sub-project within Debian for queer people, for LGBTIQ? And I said, yeah, I'm fine to drive this if I know that there's an interest to have it. So we started to discuss how it even started out with finding out how we want to name it in the first place. Because at some point it also became clear that naming it, especially Debian Queer or LGBTIQA, might be taking up too much of explanation. And then also someone joined in and asked, yeah, do we also want to cover people of color? And at that point I said, yeah, we definitely want to also be there for people of color, but I'm still white and I can't drive it that way. I can claim I try to fight against racism, and but I'm not affected by it. So we would need to have a person of color in the team to be able to drive it that way too. And gladly we managed, we got Leslie interested in the talk. She was giving a talk at DebConf in Montreal about social aspects within the community also. And she was willing to join the team, and that also sort of started to say, yeah, we want to have it named as diversity team, because for once the IRC channel was already named Debian Diversity. And as a second, it makes it more clear that we don't want to limit the spectrum, the reach of what we want to cover. We want to be there for all the underrepresented groups within Debian. And even though we have the diversity statement as very clear part of the website, which speaks out well, it might not be that very visible. And that's where we sort of tried to come up with ideas, well, that we want to do something more for visibility, so that it's not just a few sentences on the website, but that it's also visibly clear that the community has a diverse face to it. Yeah, last year in Sinchu we had also a very productive session to discuss about this. The two sessions in Montreal 2 years ago and in Sinchu last year were not video covered, streamed, for the main purpose that people can join in and feel free to speak freely without outing themselves to the broader world. If such a session is still wanted, we can arrange a ad hoc session later the week where we can continue to discuss about this. But for now, we also want to have something on stream visibly that the diversity team is here and running. You probably have seen the t-shirts which Valesio gladly designed. We have also buttons and stickers. And if you need any support or want to drop in, be invited to drop into the IRC channel, Debian Diversity. And we try to make it as safe of a space to speak freely. Also things that are upsetting. There's a lot of links going on with respect to politics around the world, which are upsetting at times. And so we can give support to each other during things like that. Last week, I had the great pleasure to have a meeting with the Grupo Dignidade, which is the local LGBTIQ support group from here, from Curitiba. And I'm also very happy that Ananda was able to make it here. 5 minutes late. And maybe you want to speak up a bit about what your group does and how the situation in Brazil is in general, or how the space is organized. Yeah, come to the front.
Thanks, Rhonda.
It's on.
It's on? Okay. Do you hear me well? Okay. Sorry, guys, I was late. I know that in Brazil we don't start events sharp, but I was like really making an effort to be here at 5, and you know, traffic and meetings and everything, so sorry. But as Rhonda was saying, we met last week. Who connected us was Monica Benicio, the widow of Marielle Franco, with her t-shirt today. And I was able to, and I had the pleasure to introduce Grupo Dignidade to them and tell them a little bit more our work here in Curitiba and in Paraná in general and in Brazil. So Grupo Dignidade is an NGO, a nonprofit that was created by Tony Hayes and David Herod. David is Englishman. He came to Brazil in the 90s with Tony, and like they are married ever since, but not legally married. They legally married. They were legally married in 2011 actually. But they had a really hard campaign in the 90s because since David was a foreigner and he didn't have any partners, like legal partners here, he couldn't stay in Brazil. So Tony's mom offered herself to marry him, and they went to the TV, and it was like a big commotion. And Brazilian exterior relations ministry had some kind of arrangement so he could be here. But it was the first time that advocacy to equal marriage went out, so in the 90s. So they created this NGO in 1992 because of HIV and everything, and since then they are advocating public policies and also going to National Congress to get us like proper laws and everything. And I've been with them since 2015, I think, probably, yeah, more or less. And I was able to implement a project called Synergy Project. There is a project that comes together with advocacy between the Congress and the Supreme Court. I'm a lawyer, actually, and I was really tired to have to go to the Congress and doing that by myself, and I found in them the courage to, in the group, to support me to go there and everything. And with Tony, we were able to accomplish some of our legal rights that we have here in Brazil. So we have same-sex marriage, the rights to adoption, and right in June, I think the sentence went out in June 28th, maybe, the Pride Day. But the criminalization of LGBTI phobia is one of the rights that we were able to accomplish in this project. But all of them came through the Supreme Court. So what we used to say and we used to do is that we go to the Congress, we talk to congressmen and congresswomen, and we go with them to the Supreme Court, to the chambers of the ministries, and talk to them and explain why our rights are relevant, why do we need to be heard and seen by the state and the government, why, and all of this stuff. And after that, we used to put an amicus brief. It's a juridical institute that makes it possible to NGOs and other associations to speak in front of the Supreme Court to defend their rights, even though they are not part in the case, you know. And we, through these ways and this movement, we were able to, in the last 2 years, accomplish not only the right to criminalization, but also the possibility to change gender and sexual orientation and gender identity, on your birth certificate without having to go to the court and, you know, petition or anything. So you need just to go to the notary and present yourself and tell them that you want to change your name and your gender, and it's all right. Right now, of course, in law, it seems like really simple, but in reality, it's really difficult. So I think that's why Rhonda asked me to tell you guys about where we are in terms of rights in Brazil right now. And I can tell you that we accomplished so much because of the Supreme Court, but yet because of the culture we have here in Brazil, like this really sexist, really homophobic, transphobic, and all of this hate that we are seeing with this movement that divides us in the political way right now. The reality really doesn't go with the law, because we need to actually have an effort to go to public spaces and explain to them that we have rights right now. We have to go to the notaries and explain to them that Supreme Court guaranteed our rights to change our birth certificates and educate them. So that's a part where Grupo Dignidade here in Curitiba is so important. First, because we have a space that that is a safe place to LGBTQ people, and not only to the LGBTQ people, but also to their parents. So people who are seeking guidance and who are struggling with the reality that we are living in. So if you have like a teenage son or daughter that's passing through a change, or just like wanting to express their sexuality or their gender identity in a different way that you don't know how to handle, the NGO has a space for those parents who want to see a therapist, or who want to be part of a group of discussion so they can, you know, be open about themselves. And learn how to deal with the situation at home. As well, we have free therapy sessions to teenagers and adults that are LGBTQ who needed who don't have money to spend on therapy. So we prevented them those sessions voluntarily. We have around 120 sessions per month. So you just need to call us and book your session and go there. And after that, the psychologists, they have your file. They will tell you when is the time to come back, and we just like have this person with us, and we say to them that it's gonna be okay, and you have a community here that you can trust, that you can be seen, and also we help them through juridical process as well. So if they are somehow violented or need to go to a police station to report a crime or something like that, we have lawyers who can go there with them and just tell them what they need to do and everything. But I think in spite of this local work that's really important, and with that comes our talk with the mayor house, with the state of Paraná and everything, and also with the universities. So we have a really nice project with UTFPR here. They are helping us to scan our documents and turn that public. We have a library, a public library with lots of documents and books about LGBTQ history in Brazil and everything. So students and researchers, they help us with that. And we also help researchers, specifically most in the health part, with our projects that we have to prevent HIV and DSTs and everything. Also mental health, and we have all those exchanges. So we have people from Harvard coming to visit us to see how we accomplish our numbers of tests. And we have foreigners that come to see how we deal with community and all this exchange. And for instance, the possibility that Rhonda had to come here and to exchange their reality in Vienna with us and how things are going. All of this is really rich for us, and we are open to all those different communities that want to dialogue and be together with us, because we know that human complexity is really huge. We are so different between each other, and we have so much to learn from each other. So I'm really thankful that I got to meet you, and I got to meet the Debian community, because I had no clue that it existed. It was like, for me as a lawyer, I have like no clue about technology at all. I'm really really dumb with that, but I'm really happy that we had this opportunity, and really happy to be sharing this experience with you guys. With our situation here in Brazil, with the government that we have right now, it's really, really hard, because even though in reality people say that our rights are accomplished by law, we know that it's not like that. Violence is increasing. The president himself, he keeps saying horrible stuff about our community, horrible stuff about Brazilian people in general. I'm still astonished to see that he was elected, but and counting down the clock so he could be away soon. But it takes us effort, and it takes us a lot of open-minded and a little bit of self-criticism for us to see that we need to dialogue more and engage more with other movements, with other communities, so we can stay strong and resist everything that's going on. So I think with numbers, I know that violence in Brazil for transgender and LGBTQ people in general, but mostly transgender people, we had a high increase, yeah, a high increase of of murders. We had more than 480 murders last year. This year, we now have the news that recently was out in Folha de São Paulo that one LGBTQ person dies in every 16 hours. So we are not talking about people who have education like us that are in a conference and are mostly white people and, or brown people. We are talking about poor black people in the favelas and in the neighborhoods that are away from downtown and mostly in states that are not southwest of Brazil. So people in the northeast, people in the north, where these sexist and this homophobic, transphobic culture is really, really tough and really part of the culture of people, So we're struggling to educate and to conquer allies. We don't want our community to prevail and be like, they commonly say, the president commonly said, ditadura gaysista, so a gay dictatorship. We don't want that. We just want to be seen as equal and see and be understood by society as we are. I think that's the landscape we have right now. So I'm really hoping that we can overcome this situation by the years. And one thing that I always keep in mind is that education is the clue for everything. And as you guys are the genius of technology, I ask you a lot of resilience to understand our situation and to help us, because most of the LGBTQ community have no clue to how to deal with technology. So if you back in your home have an NGO or a group of people that are needing some help to go online to be viral to their public policies or services and everything, help them, because they need help for sure. And that's it. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, Rhonda. And I really hope that this group can spread love and knowledge and everything through all the world. Thank you. And if you have any questions.
Does anyone has direct questions to Grupo Dignidade, maybe?
No, if you don't have any questions, it's not a problem at all. True. Okay. Okay.
First of all, I'm not good in English, sorry. Yeah, I'm going to try the question. I think the free software movement is a movement who promote the equality in the digital world. And okay, the gender movement, okay, that do it also. I see this world. Both the world have a huge breach, a huge space between this world. How do you think that this movement can influence, the technology and gender of trans movement? Yeah, because okay, I know you said the trans gender live don't have a good life, and they have
No, let me see if I understand. So you're asking how do I think that we could build bridges through this wall between technology and LGBTQ community, especially the transgender movement, right? Okay. So sexual orientation and gender identity are the largest name of it all, right? So in it, you can have all those letters. And I think that the technology world can help us by not only by sharing the knowledge of how to use technology in your most basic ways, so free softwares, online projects, and everything. How can these tools help LGBTQ community to be heard? So in online blogs or, I don't know, campaigns, going viral with within the social network, social network and Instagram, Facebook, and everything. Helping to monitor public policies, for example, and bills that are going through countries. So which country is the most violent? Which country is the most, progressive within our rights? So how we can measure. So technology helps us measure the situation, help us to have data. So here in Brazil, we have a really huge problem that we don't have official data about our community, and that's why the criminalization of LGBTI phobia is so important, because right now, if you go to the police station, you can put your report there, and the state will know that you suffered the violence, even though the person is not prosecuted, even though nothing happened. But we have a data, So that's something that technology can help us with. You guys you have the knowledge to create softwares, to create apps, to create tools in the digital world that we don't. So if we can understand each other, for example, you guys understand the reality of our community, and we understand the specific ways you can help us, because you asked me, but I really don't know specifically, because I'm not really good at technology. So, but if I'm sure that if we both sit for 30 minutes to talk, we can figure something out, So the thing is, we need to talk to each other. That's how you build bridges. And everybody is human, so everybody suffers from something. Everybody can relate to each other through something, through some experience. So I think that's how we have to see each other.
I like to address the question from the free software community point of view, because the way free software works in general is like different people have different approaches to do things. So different software, more or less doing the same thing, is available, but for different needs of the people. And we have this diverse approach how to do the things, and that comes from different perspectives of the people doing the stuff. And that's the core point why we want and need diversity in the free software movement, to also have a certain diversity within the software available, to have different points of view on how to do the software, on what works, what might not work that well. And coming back to the Debian Free Software Guidelines, it's very clear that no discrimination of the software is allowed. Like everyone is allowed to use our software. So we very welcome and invite also everyone to work on the software and join the community to drive this and make it more clear that it's not just the users, but also the developer base is very open in that regard.
Stand up, please. Stand up, please. Yeah, yeah.
Just an idea of a technological, I don't know how to say, thing we could implement, like, especially for poor LGBTQ people or ones who are, no, for some time ago, most of the community was afraid of suffering aggressions on the street. And many of them have phones, many don't. So we could discuss if there's a way we could use like old phones or other mechanism to send emergency signals in case for the community to help. There's some alternatives, but
Yeah, we thought for once in Grupo Dignidade about an app that could help people with that were suffering or that wanted to use some help after suffering some violence. But still, here in Brazil, we have another NGO, actually a startup, social startup. I don't know if that thing exists, but they call themselves that. So they are a social startup called Todes, with the X in the place of the vowel. And they developed an app that you could report violence. And the data they had was used by, I don't know how to translate that, Controladoria Geral da União. That's hard. CGU, yeah, it's a public ministry that controls all the data in Brazil and everything. But still, it was under-reported. So we don't have the official, and, you know, everybody could just go to the app and say, oh, I suffered an aggression, or I suffered a psychological aggression, or, you know, verbal or physical violence. And that's a way, but I think what we could do is to give the government some tools, because they need to be provoked, you know. So we, as a civil society movement, as an NGO, we could provoke the government, but we don't have the tools to tell them, okay, you need to use this, so we could have specific data. So maybe if we get together and we develop this tool or this software that could give us specific data, so this software would go to the police station and other public spheres that could measure the violence and everything that's going on, we could be able to implement in Curitiba or in Paraná or in Brazil even. But it takes political effort, and it takes social effort as well, because society needs to understand and needs to be okay with that, I think. But thanks for the... Any other question?
One comment was on IRC about that someone suggested that for future DebConf bidders, we might need to get some sort of focus also on diversity-related issues, like having a gender-neutral bathroom. It might be difficult depending on the laws of the corresponding country. I'm not sure how it is here in Brazil.
We have some places we have non-gender bathrooms, but most of them are private spaces, not public. So this is a public university. You probably will have female and male bathrooms, but still, that's something that we are trying to to think about how we can go to the Supreme Court with that, because non-gender bathrooms would be like the best way to be inclusive.
Yeah, I have a question now. Thinking on, yeah, we're talking about Brazil and the world, but now thinking in this conference that travels around the world with this group of people, and that we're trying to be as inclusive as possible, and we care about the security of our members, and with everything that's going on in Brazil, some members didn't feel comfortable coming, didn't feel safe coming, but some came bravely. And for those who came, like, what should we tell in terms of safety, and what should the local organization be telling people to not go out alone at night, to watch out? Like, should we, since we care for our members, we should, because they might not be aware of the sense of safety the same as Brazilians do. So what would be the advice that you would give for the organization to communicate with with the DebConf members to make sure that there's no incident?
To be fair, they already gave us advice like several months ago, and that advice is on the website. But yes.
What were they? What were the advices?
It was Adriana who dealt with it. I don't remember, but we did tell people to not walk around. I mean, walk around alone at night, regardless of who they are, and these kind of things. So, but yes, please answer his question.
Yeah, just before you answer, even if it is in the website, I think I would expect something more verbal, even like in the welcoming email that everyone receives, because I don't think everyone goes back to the website after you subscribe.
To see that.
Yeah. So just the welcoming message already have something.
Yeah. One tip that I will give you guys is that, for example, if you held this conference in some place in Africa next year, for example, most of the countries that don't accept LGBTQ people are African countries. So in some of them, they kill LGBTQ people. So we have that sentence. We have, imprisoned for life. And for those countries, you need, of course, Brazil doesn't do that, but we know the situation on the streets. I would, for the conference itself and the organization, I would tell you to research a little bit about the reality of that country and the laws that they have. So, for example, in Brazil, okay, you have a really shitty political situation right now. You have a lot of polarization. People are really angry with each other. So, regardless if you are LGBTQ or not, just tell them, like, try not to involve yourself in politics or something, so you can prevent yourself from getting hurt. But that's the way we both met, actually, because Rhonda asked Monica about some advices about Curitiba and everything. Then since Monica knew me, she connected us, and I told Rhonda that the only thing that she couldn't do, for instance, would be like walking alone in the middle of the night in downtown, because Curitiba is really ahead. It's really progressive of LGBTQ movements, but we also have skinheads. We also have lots of violence, and so. But I told her like, oh, you are a white person, so probably you won't have a problem here, and you're really tall, so it intimidates, right? So, but in general, just let people know that they have to stay together in groups. People like we know that Brazilians respect a lot foreigners. So, if you are walking on the street speaking in English or another language that's not Portuguese, if you are brown skin or white, are not like, because we are really a racist country, even though people don't say that, but we are. It's not a problem if you're not going like, outside downtown. It's not a problem because you're like in a conference, in a center with lots of people. It won't be a problem. It would be a problem if you'd go to pubs alone, if you'd go to certain places alone. And we have also an economic an economic scale of possibilities, So if you go to Batel here, for example, people won't disturb you. And if they do, you will be respected to at least call a lawyer or call a police station or call the police and ask for help. But if you go, I don't know, to another place that is not really high society, high classy, people probably would discriminate you more if you were alone. So you have to be careful with that. We have to be careful with the complexity of our society. So we have, for LGBTQ people, we have this class, state, spectrum going through us. We have race and people of color spectrum. We have different types of dressing and different types of expressing itself. So it's really hard to tell, do that or not, and don't do that. The tip I tell you is that never leave your colleague alone, for example. Never go out alone. And even though if you're not LGBTQ, this is something that we have to be careful here in Brazil.
So we are very tightly reaching the end of the session. If there might be one more.
There's one more question?
Is there enough time for it?
Just
choose
try.
I'm not sure exactly what Debian already does regarding this, but for example, it's extremely interesting that you found someone that represents the Brazilian society and also have a political position, that it has a really good grasp of the government state in Brazil, and we are also having this conference being recorded, and it would be really interesting if we could have that in other countries too, to know how's the state of other countries. So we could both take the word from each different situation from each country to the Debian community, and also open the Debian community for those persons to see them as a tool for engaging in work, or knowing that there is a community in the whole world that can support them. So what I mean is, it was really a good idea to bring this talk over here and the way it was structured. Thank you, and I hope we can see that again in other DebConfs in other countries.
Thanks for the input.
I think there are quite good final words.
Yeah, so
let's close the session, Rhonda.
Thank you all for your interest, for showing up, and also thanks, Ananda, that you were able to make the time free.
Really.
It was really a pleasure having you, and see you next year. But there's more sessions to come, so it's not the last.